John Anderson was then able to offer Charles Biederman an annual stipend so that he could go to New York or Paris or wherever he wanted to go to study art, and in exchange for several works each year. And this arrangement went on from 1934 to 1953, which gave Charles Biederman a certain window of opportunity to develop as an artist. And so he went to New York and took a studio on Washington Square, which was right next to the famous Albert A. Gallatin's Gallery of Living Art. And there he saw Mondrian, Picasso, Wangri, et cetera, and met many, many people who would prove important to his future life. This is a work that Biederman made in New York, in his New York studio in 1936, a biomorphic surrealist abstraction. And this is the kind of painting that appeared in the exhibition that Marshall Price mentioned, the important 5 contemporary American concretionist exhibition, which included Biederman, Calder, Ferren, Morris, and Shaw. He also, in the very same year, had a one-man show at the Pierre Matisse Gallery in New York, the same place that Ferren showed, Calder showed, and that really the young, up-and-coming, important new artists in New York were involved with. In 1936, also, as I went through Biederman's diaries, I found that he was enjoying studio visits from Fernand Léger, Alfred Barr, Albert E. Gallatin, Dwight MacDonald of the Partisan Review. Clement Greenberg came to the studio many times, and they had long discussions about art and theory. James Johnson Sweeney, then from the Museum of Modern Art, also came to the studio many times. Biederman was a young celebrity in New York by 1936, with a career that was going ahead very rapidly. In October of 1936, he decided to spend some time in Paris. And he went to Paris, again funded by John Pierce Anderson, and his evolution is very rapid from 1934 to 1937. We're seeing a movement from Cubist painting to this very beautiful construction made in Paris, number 5, which is made in wood. And we see already in Biederman's work an emphasis on beautiful, lush, bright, vivid color, and cast shadows, which you can also see in the wonderful work that the Newark Museum owns in the gallery. The way that the shadows move, and also as these are works that are meant to not only be seen frontally, but progressively as you go from side to side. And if you go back in the gallery and look at that work, you'll see that as you move from side to side, it introduces oblique diagonal shadows in that work. He, of course, knew the work of Mondrian, and he admired it very much, but he really felt that it was too restrictive in terms of nature's colors, and that there was more to art in the third dimension that we could experience physically. In Paris, he spent a great amount of time with Fernand Léger, who he found very sympathetic. He visited Mondrian, Van Tongerloo, Brancusi, Pevsner, Kandinsky, who he didn't like and didn't like him. He liked Giacometti. He thought Brancusi was fabulous, except they couldn't say a word to one another, but they just laughed. They had a great time. Jean Miro was also friendly and very nice. It was in the later part of 1936 that Biederman flatly refused to join the American Abstract Artists Group. And this caused no end of enmity between him and the membership for many, many years. He returned to New York in June of 1937 after Paris, and like John Ferren, which I learned from Marshall's talk, he was pretty much cut dead by the very same people who had welcomed him and admired him just a few years before. The climate had changed, the mood had changed, and Biederman's position in the art world had changed. The work in the present exhibition was made in 1938, and this is an extremely important date in Biederman's life and development. This construction, as you perhaps noticed, is very three-dimensional. It's very deep. The color planes sit on the frontal plane of the work. They almost seem to hover, on their own, not necessarily be attached to the back plane. At least that's how it seemed to me. And it is, when I did my work on the American abstract artists, which took me many years of study, and look, I always found Biederman to be exceptional. His work was beautifully constructed. It had a pristine quality about it. It had clarity, intellectual clarity about it. And this arose in part from a great intellectual transformation that he went through in 1938. In Chicago, while visiting, he went to a seminar given by the linguist Alfred Korzybski, who was the founder of the Institute of General Semantics, who had a great influence both in the United States and Europe. Korzybski's book, Science and Sanity, was something that Biederman read at the seminar and devoured, and it remained with him for the rest of his life. I've spent a couple of years now trying to figure out what did Biederman get from Korzybski. Well, the central thing I think that appealed to Biederman at this moment was something that Korzybski called the consciousness of abstracting. What Korzybski said is that the word is not the same as the thing it is talking about. The word is not the thing itself. And this could be transferred to pictures. A picture of a tree is not a tree. A picture of a person is not the person. A painting is the very enterprise of illusionistic art is like language that is unknowing. And so Biederman tried to be conscious of why he was abstracting and what he was abstracting from and what he was trying to create with his abstractions. This involvement in this reading of Korzybski led him to a 10-year project of writing a book which eventually was published in 1948 as The Art as the Evolution of Visual Knowledge. Biederman believed that the human enterprise has to do with an ever greater growing understanding of our world and our universe, especially the natural world. He felt that art reflected mankind's growing understanding of the natural world, and that art in the 20th century should reflect the 20th century scientific understanding of our world. And so he tried to do this in every way that he could. This is Biederman in Red Wing, Minnesota, sitting next to a sculpture he made in 1937. It's made of concrete, and it's now in the collection of the Minneapolis Institute of Art. He spent a great deal of time for the next 10 years reading. He read a lot of Goethe. He read Alfred North Whitehead. He read contemporary quantum physics. He read Cézanne's letters in the original French. He tried to, in many ways, put together an alternate. I really found it ironic because the book itself is very big and you could break your toe if it dropped on your foot. It's 700 pages. And in format, it resembles Helen Gardner's Art Through the Ages, which I find very ironic. I never asked him, that. I think he would have been angry.